The label began when I was 12, the day Mom found my business plan for a neighborhood lawn service, written in purple gel pen. "Dreams are cute, sweetie, but you need to be realistic about your abilities," she said, tucking the carefully drawn charts into the recycling bin. "Maybe focus on being a good helper instead." 23 years later, that helper mentality had crystallized into my family's favorite way to introduce me. At every gathering, every social event, every chance encounter with their friends, I was their secretary, their assistant, their forever entry-level daughter who had never quite figured out how to aim higher. The pattern repeated for years. When I graduated college with a computer science degree, Dad explained to relatives that I'd found something practical in office support. When I moved to Silicon Valley, Mom told the neighbors I was doing filing work for tech companies. When I bought my first house at 25, they assumed I'd needed help with the down payment, because secretaries don't make that kind of money. Each assumption built on the last until the narrative was so deeply embedded in family lore that questioning it seemed impossible. I was the practical one, the supporter, the person who kept others organized while they pursued real success. The irony, of course, was that while my family saw me as perpetually entry-level, I had already been promoted to senior engineer at 3 different startups by age 27. While they worried about my limited career prospects, venture capitalists were returning my calls within hours. While they encouraged me to be realistic about my capabilities, I was debugging systems that processed millions of transactions daily for companies they'd only read about in the news. But maintaining their comfortable assumptions had become a full-time job in itself. Every phone call required careful editing to remove references to board meetings, acquisition talks, and patent filings. Every family visit meant dressing down, driving my older car, and speaking vaguely about computer work when asked about my job. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting, but the alternative felt even more complicated. Tonight was Dad's company holiday party, held at the Meridian Country Club where he'd been a member for 15 years. I knew the place well. Countless family dinners, endless evenings of watching him network with executives, listening to him explain why certain people belonged in certain positions. According to Dad, some people were born to lead and others were born to follow. Clearly, I had inherited Mom's supportive personality, rather than his executive instincts. "Sarah, remember to let me do the talking tonight," Dad instructed during the drive over. "These are important business relationships and first impressions matter. Just smile and be pleasant, but don't try to contribute to conversations about things you don't understand." I nodded from the back seat, the same spot I'd occupied during childhood car rides while Dad explained the hierarchy of the adult world. Mom rode in front, of course, his equal partner in marriage and social status. Michael, my brother, sat behind Dad, positioned as heir apparent to family success. I sat behind Mom, appropriately placed as the supportive daughter who would never challenge the established order. "David, bring your family over here," called Mr. Harrison, Dad's boss and the regional vice president. Dad's chest puffed with pride as he gestured for us to follow him across the marble foyer. This was his moment to show off his successful family to company leadership, each member neatly positioned to reflect well on his judgment and parenting skills. The introductions followed their familiar script. "This is my wife, Margaret," Dad began with practiced precision, "a wonderful homemaker who keeps our family running smoothly. My son, Michael, who just made partner at his law firm downtown. He's handling some significant merger cases this year." Michael straightened his tie and shook hands with the confidence of someone who'd never been told his dreams were too big. At 31, he embodied everything Dad valued in a child: prestigious career, impressive salary, social connections that enhanced the family's standing. Then Dad's hand landed on my shoulder. I felt the familiar weight of diminished expectations. "And this is my daughter, Sarah. She's our secretary." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken limitations. Mr. Harrison smiled politely, shook my hand with the distracted courtesy reserved for support staff, and turned back to Dad and Michael for the real conversation. "How nice," Mrs. Harrison said, giving me a warm but dismissive nod, the kind that said she wouldn't need to remember my name. "Secretary work is so important. Someone has to keep the important people organized." Michael chuckled. "Sarah's been entry-level forever. Some people are just more comfortable in supporting roles. Not everyone has the instincts for leadership." Approving nods followed, reinforcing their shared belief in natural hierarchies. I smiled and nodded, The response I'd perfected over decades of similar moments. That's true, I said pleasantly. I'm definitely more comfortable in the background. Dad beamed at my modest response. This was exactly how these interactions were supposed to go. I played the humble family secretary, and he maintained his image as the successful executive with the properly ordered household. Everyone stayed comfortable in their assigned positions. Sarah's always been our practical one, Mom added, joining the conversation with a plate of appetizers balanced effortlessly in one hand. Never had those unrealistic dreams that cause so much disappointment. She knows her strengths and stays within them. The conversation flowed on as it always did, about Michael's latest case, Dad's promotion prospects, Mom's charity work. I was present but peripheral, acknowledged but not consulted, introduced but not interviewed. The family secretary. Always taking mental notes. Always invisible. Harrison continued, advancing to slides of cloud computing infrastructure and data processing capabilities. Companies that were barely known 5 years ago, he said, are now essential to how business operates worldwide. Images filled the screen, server farms, fiber optic networks, digital interfaces, systems that looked remarkably similar to the ones I had been designing and scaling for the past 8 years. Of course, that observation didn't fit with my role as someone who supposedly just filed important documents for other people. Now, Mr. Harrison said, his tone shifting to signal something significant, I want to share a story that hit particularly close to home this week. Something that reminded me how quickly our industry is evolving, and how important it is to recognize excellence wherever we find it. The screen filled with a familiar image. The distinctive Fortune logo blazed across the top in red typography. This month's Fortune features their annual CEO of the Year recognition, he continued, highlighting executives who've demonstrated exceptional leadership during one of the most challenging business environments in decades. Dad straightened in his chair, instinctively alert. He had been subscribing to Fortune for 20 years, studying the strategies of America's most successful business leaders. These were his professional heroes, the pinnacle of achievement he admired from a distance. The winner this year, Mr. Harrison said, is particularly noteworthy. She represents something we're seeing more and more in today's business environment. A leader who built a global technology empire from nothing, revolutionizing how companies manage their digital infrastructure and data processing needs. The magazine cover came into sharp focus. Against a backdrop of server farms and gleaming data centers was a headshot I had taken 6 months earlier for Datacorp's annual report. Datacorp Systems, Mr. Harrison read, has grown from a 2-person startup operating out of a rented garage to a $5.2 billion enterprise in just 8 years. Their cloud infrastructure platforms now support over 40% of Fortune 500 companies, making CEO Sarah Chin one of the most influential technology leaders in the world. The silence that followed wasn't polite, it was stunned. Airless. The silence of people trying to process information that contradicted everything they thought they knew. Janet, seated beside me, the same woman who had spent dinner praising the wisdom of my stable career choices, found her voice first. Barely a whisper. Isn't this you? On Fortune's cover. Every head at table 7 turned toward me at once. Their faces cycled through confusion, disbelief, and recognition. The woman they had been casually discussing the virtues of secretarial work with, the one they had advised to accept her limitations, was staring back at them from a magazine cover celebrating the year's most successful business leader. The silence rippled outward like a stone in still water. Table 6 noticed, then Table 5. The gentle hum of conversation and clinking of silverware vanished, replaced by the oppressive weight of realization. From the head table I caught Dad's profile, his mouth slightly open, his brain working furiously to reconcile what he was seeing. His entire worldview of family hierarchy was collapsing in public. Michael had turned completely around in his chair, his confident networking forgotten. He stared at the screen, then at me, then back again, his certainty replaced with the vacant look of someone who just lost his place in the story. Mom's carefully composed expression cracked. The practical daughter who had been told to stay in her lane, to temper her ambitions, had built one of the most successful tech companies in American history. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison kept going, oblivious to the drama unfolding in his audience. According to Fortune's analysis, he said, Datacorp's impact on business efficiency has been transformative. Their platform integrations have saved companies an estimated $200 billion in operational costs over the past 3 years alone. The numbers hit the room like thunder. A $5.2 billion valuation. 40% of the Fortune 500. $200 billion in savings. This was not modest success. It was empire building. The article highlights Chen's unconventional approach to leadership, Harrison went on. She started with just $50,000 in personal savings and a vision for simplifying enterprise data management. Today Forbes estimates her net worth at $2.3 billion. She was also recently named one of the 20 most influential women in global technology. Hundreds of eyes burned into me. The weight of revelation pressed down like a physical force. The family secretary narrative, the one that had defined me for 23 years, was crumbling in real time, exposed as deliberate misdirection. Harrison's voice carried on. The most remarkable thing about Chen's story is her philosophy of what she calls strategic invisibility. According to her Fortune interview, she believes true power comes from building systems and capabilities, not from seeking personal recognition. She has built a global empire while maintaining near total anonymity in her personal life. The phrase struck the room like a blow. Strategic invisibility. It explained everything and nothing at once. I hadn't hidden my success out of shame, I had protected it. Maintained the divide between who I was professionally and who my family needed me to be. The presentation closed with remarks about transformation and leadership. But his words were lost in the stunned silence. Harrison had no idea he'd just detonated a bomb in the middle of his company's holiday celebration. No one moved. The silence stretched until it shattered with the sharp crash of my cousin Jennifer's salad plate hitting the marble floor. Her hand shook as she stared at me wide-eyed. That sound broke the spell. Conversations erupted. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that really her? $5 billion company? CEO of the year? Dad was walking toward me now, his face cycling through emotions I had never seen in 35 years. Mom clutched her purse with the jerky movements of someone in shock. Michael sat frozen, still staring at the blank screen as if it might explain away the impossible. Sarah. Dad's voice was measured, carefully controlled. The same tone he used in negotiations when composure was essential. We need to talk. Right now. I stood calm as ever. The same calm that had carried me through 8 years of building data core and 23 years of navigating my family's expectations with surgical precision. Strategic invisibility had served its purpose. But now the time had come for strategic revelation. As I walked with Dad toward a quiet corner of the ballroom, fragments of conversations trailed after me. She never said anything. Fortune magazine. $2.3 billion. The questions would multiply in the days ahead. How long had I been running a global company? Why had I let them believe I was just a secretary? What else had I hidden? The answers would come in time. But as the weight of diminished expectations finally lifted from my shoulders, I felt something new, terrifying, exhilarating, and long overdue. The family secretary was gone. And her father, the regional vice president, was about to meet the woman worth more than his company's entire annual revenue. Strategic invisibility had ended. Strategic revelation had begun.